everyone, and welcome back. With National Adoption Month coming up soon, I thought it would be great to do a deep dive on a topic that you all seem really interested in based on what you've sent in,
Oh, yeah,
adopting older children.
absolutely.
And we've got some really interesting source material here, a mix of statistics and insights from the Bible, which I think brings a really cool perspective.
Yeah. You know what's striking to me is how much those sources really intertwine, like practical information with heartwarming stories.
Yeah.
You get both sides of this really important subject.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's jump into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
One of the first things that stood out to me was this statistic that nearly 123,000 children in the U.S. foster care system are waiting to be adopted, and a significant number of them are over the age of 10.
Wow.
That's a lot of kids, and
Yeah.
it really makes you think about the ones who are often overlooked.
Yeah, it really does. And I think one of the reasons that happens is that people don't often think about older children when they think about adoption.
Right.
They often picture babies and toddlers.
Uh-huh.
But there are so many older children who are waiting much longer for a family.
Why is that?
Well, there are a lot of reasons, but unfortunately, a lot of it has to do with misconceptions.
Oh, that's so sad to think about these kids waiting, especially when, they have so much to offer.
Absolutely.
What are some of the misconceptions that you think might be holding people back?
One of the biggest is this idea that older children in the foster care system are somehow damaged goods.
Ah,
People think that they'll be harder to parent or that they'll come with too much baggage.
yeah.
And that's simply not true.
Right.
These kids have definitely faced some challenges, but they've also developed incredible resilience just by navigating the system.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it for a second. The strength that it takes to adapt to new environments, to cope with so much uncertainty, and to hold on to hope.
Yeah.
That's what you're welcoming into your family.
Wow, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So it's not about focusing on what they've been through,
Right.
but rather the strength that they've built because of it.
Exactly. And when you shift your perspective that way, you start to see just how much potential these kids have.
Yeah.
They're often a lot more mature and independent than kids their own age, and they have this deep appreciation for stability and love.
That makes sense. It's about changing our focus from the challenges to the unique strengths that these children bring.
Absolutely. And, this actually connects perfectly to one of the Bible passages that we've got here,
Oh.
James 1.27,
Mm-hmm.
which talks about caring for those in need, particularly orphans.
Right.
And for many people of faith, adoption becomes a way to actually live out that calling,
Yeah.
to put their faith into action.
Wow, that adds a really interesting dimension to it. It's not just about providing a home, but really embodying your
Yeah.
faith.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of faith, another verse that we have here, Romans 8.15, talks about spiritual adoption.
Okay.
It reminds us that we all become part of God's family through our faith.
I love that, such a beautiful image of being welcomed and loved unconditionally.
Exactly. And what's really fascinating is how much that mirrors the experience of adopting an older child.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, you're welcoming someone into your family, offering them that same unconditional love and acceptance, regardless of what they've been through in the past.
Oh.
It's a really powerful reflection of God's love.
So, we're talking about this idea of mirroring God's love. What does that look like when it comes to raising an older child?
Well, I think it starts with recognizing that just like everyone, these kids need love and stability and a sense of belonging.
Okay.
They need a safe place to heal and grow and figure out who they are.
That makes sense, but I'm curious, what about the actual adoption process itself? A lot of people might feel intimidated by that, especially if they're not familiar with how it all works.
Sure. Well, it's important to know that there are actually different types of adoption, and they all have their own unique processes.
Oh, okay. So like what?
So you've got foster care adoption, where you're adopting a child who's already in the foster care system.
Oh.
Then there's private adoption, where you're typically working with an agency or an attorney to connect with birth parents.
Uh-huh.
And then there's intercountry adoption, where you're adopting a child from another country.
So there are options depending on what you're looking for.
Exactly. And regardless of which type of adoption you choose, you'll go through something called a home study.
Okay, what's that?
Basically, a social worker will come and assess your home environment, your family dynamics, and your overall readiness to adopt.
To make sure it's a safe place for a child.
Exactly.
Seems pretty thorough.
It is, but the good news is you get a lot of support and guidance throughout the whole process.
Oh, good. So you're not just out there on your own?
Not at all.
Mhm.
There are social workers, adoption agencies, support groups, other adoptive families.
So you've got people to help.
Exactly. Don't hesitate to reach out for support.
Yeah.
It's definitely a process, and it takes time,
Yeah.
but it can be incredibly rewarding.
Speaking of rewarding, one of the statistics that really struck me was that adoption changes the lives of both the child and the adoptive parents.
For sure.
It's not just one-sided.
I think that's so important to remember. That's not just about the child's needs.
Right.
Adopting an older child can truly be transformative for the whole family. It can bring you a new sense of purpose, it can strengthen your family bonds, and create a really unique dynamic.
Wow. So we've talked about this really profound impact that adoption can have on both the child and the family.
Right.
It makes me think about this idea of finding a home and belonging. And actually, there's this really beautiful verse in Psalm 68.6 that speaks to that.
Right.
It talks about how God sets the lonely in families.
Yeah.
And that really resonated with me.
It's a really beautiful image that speaks to that deep human need for connection,
Yeah.
to belong somewhere. And adoption, in many ways, fulfills that need, not just for the child, but for the adoptive family, too.
It's like completing a circle,
Exactly.
this feeling of whole.
I love that.
But, we've been talking a lot about the positives, and rightly so.
Sure.
But I think it's also important to acknowledge that adopting an older child might come with its own unique challenges.
Oh, absolutely. It's not always easy.
So what are some of the things that potential adoptive parents should be prepared for?
Well, these children may have experienced things like trauma or neglect. They might have been moved around a lot in the foster care system.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that can make it hard for them to trust adults or form attachments.
Yeah.
And as they get older and go through adolescence and young adulthood, there might be some emotional ups and downs as they work through their past.
So it's not about sugarcoating things.
No, definitely not.
But going in with your eyes wide open, knowing that it's a journey that requires commitment and resilience from everyone involved.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. While there will definitely be challenges, they're not impossible to overcome. And the rewards, the love, the growth you experience as a family that often outweighs the difficulties.
So I imagine it takes a really special kind of family to take on these challenges. What would you say to families who are considering this path? What qualities are essential for success when adopting an older child?
I think the most important thing is having a lot of patience, empathy, and understanding.
Okay.
These kids need parents who can meet them where they are, listen without judgment, and offer that unwavering love and support.
So it's about creating that safe and nurturing environment where they feel seen, heard, and valued.
Exactly. And it's about being willing to learn and adapt. Every child is different. Every adoption journey is unique. So there's no one right way to do this.
Yeah.
You have to be open to seeking guidance, trying different parenting strategies, and growing alongside your child.
Sounds like it requires a lot of flexibility.
It does, but that's where the growth happens.
Yeah.
Both for the child and for the parents, it's a journey of shared learning and discovery.
I love that. And, something we haven't really touched on too much is the spiritual dimension. Earlier we talked about James 1.27. Are there any other verses that come to mind when you think about caring for the vulnerable, particularly through adoption?
Yeah, absolutely. Isaiah 1.17 really stands out to me.
What does that one say?
It encourages us to learn to do good, seek justice, correct oppression, bring justice to the fatherless.
Wow.
And, in a lot of ways, adoption can be seen as an act of justice.
How so?
It's about standing up for those who have been marginalized, those who haven't had a fair start in life. It's about providing opportunities and creating a more equitable world for these kids.
That's a really powerful way to look at it. So it's not just about personal fulfillment, but also about contributing to a greater good.
Exactly.
Making a real difference in the lives of those who need it most.
And, I actually heard a story recently that illustrates this beautifully.
Oh, I'd love to hear it.
So this family adopted a teenage boy who had been in and out of foster care for years.
Oh.
He had faced so much adversity, but once he found a loving and supportive home, he just flourished.
That's amazing.
He graduated high school, went on to college, and is now thriving in his career.
Yeah.
It's just a testament to the power of adoption, not just for the child, but for the entire community.
That's incredible. It really shows you the ripple effect that one act of kindness can have one decision to open your heart, and your home can change everything.
Yeah, it's inspiring to see how adoption can create this chain reaction of positivity.
You're right. And, while adoption might not be the right path for everyone,
Sure.
there are still so many ways to support older children in foster care.
Absolutely.
like mentoring, volunteering, donating to organizations that support foster families, even just advocating for policy changes that improve the system.
Every little bit counts.
It's about recognizing that these are our kids.
Yeah.
They're part of our community.
And their well-being is a shared responsibility.
We can all play a role in creating a more supportive and loving environment for them.
Absolutely.
This has been so eye-opening.
It has been a good one.
You know, we've really explored all the different sides of this, the emotional, practical, and spiritual aspects of adopting older children.
For sure.
And it's clear that it's so much more than just giving a child a home.
Yeah.
It's about building a family, building those connections, and really having a lasting impact on these amazing kids' lives.
Well said.
So as we start to wrap things up,
Okay.
is there a final thought or question that you'd like to leave with our listener?
You know, as we've been talking, I keep coming back to this one question. It's clear that as a society, we need to do more to support older children in foster care.
Yeah.
So I'd like to ask our listeners this. What's one thing you can do today to make a difference in the life of a child who's waiting for a family?
I love that question.
Yeah.
It really brings it home.
It does.
It's not about the big ideas. It's about taking action.
Right.
Making that difference.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be something huge.
Yeah.
You know, it could be volunteering your time at a local foster care organization, donating some books or clothes, or even just spreading awareness about the need for adoptive families.
You know, I think sometimes we get overwhelmed by the size of the problem.
Right.
And we feel like our little actions aren't going to do anything.
No.
Wait.
Even small gestures can have a ripple effect.
A little bit of kindness can really go a long way.
It can really brighten a child's day and remind them that they matter,
That they're loved.
that they're not forgotten.
This deep dive has been so insightful.
It has.
It's really challenged me to think differently about family.
Yeah.
And it's given me a renewed sense of hope.
I'm so glad to hear that. And to our listener, thank you so much for being here with us today.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
It has.
And, you know, before we go, I want to add one more thought. Even if adoption isn't right for you personally, there are still so many ways to make a difference in these children's lives.
Absolutely. Whether you choose to adopt, foster, volunteer, donate, or advocate, every act of support matters.
Well said.
It all creates that ripple effect of positive change.
Thank you so much for guiding us through this deep dive.
It's been my pleasure.
It's been truly enriching. And to our listener, we hope this conversation has given you some new ideas and maybe inspired you to get involved in whatever way feels right for you.
Exactly. Every child deserves a loving and supportive home.
And together we can make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's it for this deep dive. Until next time, keep those hearts and minds open.
See you then.